I'm the Wolfman coming at you today from the year 2020. This video was shot in January of 2020. Living in the future, as they say, and there's no better way to live in the future than to honor our historic past and our roots. And one of those ways is to talk a little bit about one of the favorite subjects to many bushcrafters, knives and tools. And that's what today's video is going to be about. So this here gives us a gamut of pretty much every type of knife that you can find. Now, it's important to understand, especially in the days of the internet, that there are basically two different things about knives. There are facts and there are opinions. A good percentage of all the stuff you will learn about the internet, if you want to know about knives, is all opinion-based. Very little of it is fact. You'll find that, of course, by looking at the comment section below of all the chest-beating crazy comments of, you know, you make a video and there's always someone there to tell you how wrong you are. So let's begin. So, knives themselves are based into different categories. Large, broad categories of knives, we would start here. This is what we would call a carbon steel blade, which means in the metal itself there's a large amount of carbon in the steel. And you can see, you might be able to pick that up there. It's a little bit rusty, so if you don't take good care of it, if you don't oil it from time to time, it's going to rust out on you, especially if you are in a saltwater or a marine environment. Next, of course, is stainless. These knives are both about the same set of years old, and you can see that the stainless steel knife there, nothing really wrong with it, all in pretty good shape. So those are two categories. The differences between stainless steel and carbon steel are pretty simple, right? One, of course, has a large amount of carbon, like 1 or 2% more, depending on the creation of the knife in the blade. That allows it to rust. Stainless steel, it'll still rust, but not quite as much. Most people will have all kinds of various opinions on it. Simply put, stainless steel is usually a little more harder, and it is harder to sharpen. So if you get into like your K-bar style knife, they are going to be a little bit more challenging to sharpen. Carbon steel, sharper, finer knife blade. There's also a thing where some people believe that with your ferro rod, sometimes the ferro rods work better with a carbon steel than a stainless steel. Again, that may or may not be true. It just depends on your opinion of it. So past our stainless steel versus carbon steel, we then move on to what we call Tang. And Tang is how far inside the knife blade the knife actually goes. So with this is called a full Tang blade. So the knife itself starts right there, goes all the way through here, ends right there, just like that. So inside the knife, you can see completely, it is a full Tang. So the knife is one big piece, goes from one end to the other. Makes it for a solid, more sturdy knife. Lots of bushcrafty type people, they always prefer these kind of blades with a full Tang. They are inherently going to be stronger, of course, just like a car with a frame versus the A-frame, right? Depending on what you're doing with it, it can be stronger and tougher. Past that, you have what's called the rat tang, and the rat tang is visible in this blade right there. So basically what that is the blade starts here, runs to here, and it ends right there. And then inside it becomes a little tiny little dot, and you can see right there. So it's like a rat tail, hence part of the name. So it runs to here, stops here, and then in there it's just a little metal bar, basically, is what that is, and the little metal bar becomes the handle. A good percentage of knives are made like this. This is a full-on military blade knife. There's nothing wrong with it. It works really well, but if you're going to beat the living crap out of your tools, this one isn't going to be as strong as this one. Then you get into a knife like the Mora. And the Mora is what's called a 3/4 Tang blade. And what that means is the blade starts here, it stops right, the actual blade stops there. It goes into a little tiny, like a little wiggly thing, and it stops right there. Now, if you want to take a look quickly at this X-ray, there you go. You can see how somebody took an X-ray of a set of these knives, and the Tang, or the blade itself, goes to right about there in the blade. It's called a 3/4 Tang. These knives, to give you an idea of how tough they are, we bought these way back in 2012 when we started our organization. They have been used by tens of thousands of students, very incompetent students because they were new. Some skilled students beat the living heck out of this equipment, and these knives are fine. All we have to do is usually give them a sharpen once every 6 months. They have been batoned, they have been used, they have been abused, stepped on. Every bad thing you think you can do with a knife has happened to this, and the blade itself is fine. So 3/4 tang, we've only ever had a couple people break them once, and that was by misusing the blade, hitting it here with a piece of wood rather than here. But anyway, so the 3/4 tang works really well. The final style of blade is going to be the folding blade, and that's this guy here, right? So the reason it's called a folding blade, folds up, fits in your pocket. There's a lot of benefits to a folding blade, and there's also a lot of challenges to a folding blade. This is also a folding blade here, right? So the benefits, of course, it's a lot smaller than all of these knives, fits in your pocket. If you roll down a hill, it's not going to open up. You can see a decent one shouldn't shake free, right? Right. This one you have to use the little spider hole, as it's known as, right there to open it up. The downside to them is that little pin right there, you can see it, that little pin is the only thing holding these two pieces of metal together. So what will happen is if I strike that pin, drop it, bang it, twist it, or I'm generally abusive to it, I will break that pin, and then you will have two separate blades. Now if you're getting into a super high-end foldable, you may be spared that, but for the most part, most of these foldable knives have that as a severe weak point, right? And if I have the locking mechanism, listen, hear that? If this locking mechanism breaks, if for whatever reason, I don't know, I'm stabbing something with it, or I'm twisting it, or do whatever, and I bang it hard enough, and that locking mechanism lets go, what's going to happen is that this can now pop open, and it can go and it can cut me in the hand. Yes, I've actually had this happen a couple of times. So what we tell for bushcraft use, specifically, is all that these knives are good for, like a folding blade, is as a backup blade, or for opening your Christmas presents. Other than that, I wouldn't really use them for heavy bushcraft use, carving, cutting, things like that. But again, great backup tool. This is one that my daily carry. I carry it pretty much every single day. It's a good blade. I like it, but I'm really delicate with it. Finally, we have another blade here, another blade type. This is called a neck knife. The reason is it's designed to hang upside down and not fall out, right? It hangs on your neck while you're out in the woods. The idea is it's a very small knife. You can see it's quite small. This one has a full tang, as you can see. Blade starts there, ends there. Designed for little quick, fast cutting tasks. So I would use this for, I don't know, cutting my oranges or cutting my apples or whatever. Nothing really heavy, but it's designed so that if I need a knife in a second, I've got it, right? And so that's what neck knives are for. Lots of internet rhetoric on neck knives, good, bad, whatever, but that's kind of the fact is. Small knife designed to hang around your neck. One of the last knives is a very special purpose knife. This is a scuba diving knife, right? So as a scuba knife, it has different features. All knives are designed for specific purposes. It's got a blunt tip. The blunt tip basically tells us that it's good for carving and stabbing stuff, right? It has this, which is designed for cutting ropes and stuff. As a diver, theoretically, you could get caught up in fishing line or rope, so you want to use that to cut it. Has a serrated edge for sawing through rope, right? It's stainless steel. Of course, most scuba knives are stainless steel, and it is most likely a rat tang, so the tang will probably be in there. As you can see, you can't really see it at the end. Anyway, it's a good tool. They get really sharp. They are stainless steel, so they can take a lot of abuse, but they're hard to sharpen. But, of course, nice and waterproof. So that sort of goes through all the different knives. Now I can talk a little bit more about them as well, of course. So like I said, this thing here, beautiful big chopper knife designed for the military. Now you see it has this crossbar piece on it right there. That crossbar piece is designed to hold your hand like this, right? So your hand doesn't slip forward. The problem with this is if I'm doing fine bushcrafty work, so I can put my finger in that hole right there, and I'm pushing it here, you'll see on this side that that's pushing into my hand. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I really don't like that personally. This is my opinion. I find it a pain in the butt, all right? Military knife as well. This is Ontario 499 survival knife. It also has that because the Army says so. It says if it's an Army knife and you want it to be considered, it's got to have that piece on it. What some people do if they really like the knife and they say this particular one, they'll just cut that off with the grinder, re-blue it, I don't know, whatever. You can do that if that's what you're into. With the Moras, they are specifically designed for bushcrafty use, right? So they have a nice flat back on them, and they have that there for your hand, right? And basically what that's for is allows us to make sure that when I'm pushing and carving really hard like this, what's going to happen is my finger isn't going to slip onto the blade surface here and cause an injury, right? So you put your hand on the back of the blade and push forward, and that's basically it. So there we have it. Quick talk about blades and blade use. If you want to hit me up on my website, I will put it right there. There we go. Enjoy this video. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing.